All right. I'm Joe Turner, and this is the City Manager Unfiltered podcast, a podcast for city managers and other public sector executives. It is the most influential local government podcast in America. And with me today is a guest by the name of Joe Dessenberger. I'm going to introduce him more in a second, let him introduce himself as well. But I want to do a couple of quick announcements before we get to the interview. Coming up in October, as you guys know, the second week of October from the 7th to the 15th, I'm going to be making a tour through the South, the Storm in the South tour. I'll be making stops in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. I already have stops on the docket for Front Royal, Virginia, Lynchburg, Virginia on the 7th for lunch and dinner. Going to be doing Augusta, Georgia on the 8th for lunch and dinner. Heading out to Beaufort, South Carolina for the 9th and the 10th. And then I'm going to shoot up to Charlotte on the 11th for lunch. We're going to be having a little shindig up that way. And then the rest of the schedule is kind of open. On Sunday, I'm going to be doing a church session with Daniel Rosemont. I'll be attending church with him. And then I'm looking at maybe doing a hiking trip of some kind, an outdoor event on Monday, because that's going to be Columbus Day. And some of the folks up there still get that as a holiday in that region. So after that, it's really wide open. I'm going to try to finish up in Richmond on the 15th or so and complete that circuit. But that trip is being generously sponsored by Clear Curb Professionals and City Detect. I want to thank them for their support. And if you're interested in meeting with me one-on-one or coming to one of the lunches or dinners that are being sponsored by those two fine companies, please let me know. Would love to meet you. Love to get to know you guys and put some faces to some names. Really excited about it. Secondarily, I want to remind you all that I do have the AAME job board. It's free for any city or recruiter to put a senior or executive level recruitment on the job board. So go to jobs.aame.org. And then finally, we will be having our second Q&A session with the city manager for the aspiring members, the aspiring executive members of the AAME. Jeff Bagenshoe, he is the Rochelle, Illinois city manager who was recently on the podcast. He's going to be doing a Q&A on the 23rd in the AAME community. So if you want to tune into that and talk to a city manager and ask them some questions and you're aspiring to be an executive, that'd be a good opportunity for you to sign up to become an AAME member and get plugged in. If you're already a member, please go to the community platform and RSVP for that event. Now, on to the interview at hand. Again, Joe Dessenberger, he is the assistant city manager for the city of Mays, Kansas, literally a stone's throw away from my house. And I wanted to have him on the program because we had we didn't have an exchange on my LinkedIn, but he responded to one of my LinkedIn posts. And what happened is I put up a retirement letter by the Gainesville, Florida city manager who was retiring at the age of 70. And she put out a very impactful statement regarding her personal, professional reasons for why she was deciding to step away. And Joe had made a comment on on the post where he talked about his father working every day until he passed away at the age of 70 and never really got a chance to enjoy the fruits of his labor. And so we're going to talk with Joe today about sort of that whole element of the life cycle of a professional executive. When do you call it quits? When do you tap out and enjoy your life and enjoy the fruits of your labor? So before we get into that, Joe, welcome to the podcast. And why don't you take a second to introduce folks to your background, because you didn't come to the city management profession the normal way.
Thanks for having me here. First of all, I appreciate you having me on. This is a topic that's very close to my heart. So I actually started out in local government, working for the city of Wichita, which is a major metropolitan city in our area. Worked there for 22 years, rose to the level of police captain, which in that city is a bureau commander. Got to a point where I felt like I needed to do something different. And so I left and went full-time military at the early age of 42. I'd been in the National Guard prior to that and had served a few years on active duty prior to the police department. So I never had a break in military service, but I went full-time. Did that for about 4 years, got caught up in sequestration. Had to find a full-time job again, stayed part-time with the National Guard. Went to work for a school district as an operations director, and then later a finance and operations director. Had the opportunity, believe it or not, to return back to full-time military and finish that career out as a deputy wing commander for an Air Force wing in June of 2024. So during that transition out of the military service, the one thing I never really liked about the federal government was I never really got to deal with the folks face to face that made those decisions that I had to live by, right? I operated under the direction of Congress and the president, and I didn't get to talk to them.
Right.
And
It's a one-way line of communication, right?
yeah, so working for the city of Wichita, you could actually go down to the council chamber and you could have a discussion with the council. You could go to workshops. You could visit with individual council members. So I always like local government because local government, you can talk to the people that direct you. You also get to talk to the people that your decisions affect.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I had a few years left in me, still a little bit young to just fully call it quits. And so I looked for an opportunity back in local government, and I was lucky enough to be picked up by Mays here about a year and a half ago, and it's been a blast.
That's awesome. What point in your professional life cycle, whether it was before you went full-time military or after, and then you went back to full-time military, when did you sort of have this inkling or this idea that you might want to get into local government and possibly the city management space?
I don't know that I ever really did. I think public service is something that if you look at all the jobs that I've held, they've all been public service, right? And so I am comfortable in the government space. I do feel like I do my best every day to represent the taxpayer because I too am a taxpayer. And so I've always looked at everything that I do is it a value added service? So when I started looking at my transition out of the military, obviously a deputy wing commander, my last job, I had 15 squadrons and 5 groups and 1,300 employees. And transitioning out of that, I probably wasn't a good guy for mixing paint at Lowe's or something like that. So I figured, let's go back to something I know. I know budgets. I know how to get projects done. I know how to stand behind people and support them in getting their jobs done. And all the jobs in City Hall are important jobs. We don't keep people around just because we want to give somebody a paycheck. Everybody's doing. Sometimes in small City Hall where I'm at now, people are wearing multiple hats.
Absolutely.
Right. And so being able to support them, guide them, give them the mentorship and watch them grow, it's really fun every day.
Yeah. So you have an interesting path in the sense that you were working for a local government agency, but also part-time military and then full-time military. Then you were not full-time military, but working for a different level of local government jurisdiction with the school district, and then back to the military. So you kind of ping pong back and forth, right? Which is not this traditional path. And I'm kind of curious to get your take on the military to public sector executive service, right? There's a lot of individuals who want to come into the local government ranks, the executive ranks from the military. There's a lot of people who have some pretty passionate viewpoints when it comes to the pros and cons of that. There's a lot of people out there who think that sometimes these individuals are a little too regimented, a little too structured or rigid. Others think that's a really great transitionary phase. I think a lot of it's personality dependent on the individual. But I'm also curious to get your kind of take on the fact that you had this military experience and you also had also much in your career being in a police department, which is quasi-militaristic with the hierarchy and the chain of command. What are your thoughts on that transition from that role where you're in that hierarchical sort of structure, that chain of command structure, and you come into, say, the local government executive ranks where it's a different animal?
Well, and I think there is an element of personality based, right? I know people that are very military and they're always going to see the world completely in that light. I think I had the luxury of being in the police department and working in roles inside the police department where I actually did things for the city as a whole. I was basically working some jobs in the police department that actually benefited the city as a whole. So I worked with water department, I worked with sewer department, I worked with others. And at the end of the day, I'm an influence type of leader. I don't feel like I need to wear my authority on my sleeve, and I don't think you get the buy-in when you do it that way, right? So I think it would surprise a lot of people. When I interviewed for this job, one of the things I think my city manager was worried about was, this guy's coming out of the military.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell one of his questions was, so you're coming out of the military and this is a civilian environment. Do you feel like you'll fit in? It was a question kind of like that. And I said, I think you'd be surprised that in today's military, as much as you like it or not, your young soldiers and airmen that are entering this service are very intelligent. And they're going to ask you why, even if you're a military commander, right? And so you have to lead through influence. You have to put the ego aside. You have to put the rank aside. You have to lead them through influence and convince them that the reason they're doing something is for something bigger than themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing you do in city government. You don't come in every day stomping up and down the hall acting like you're in charge.
Right.
I'm in service to the people that work for me. They need me because my planning administrator, 1 year out of college, I really don't know anything about planning either, but we're going to learn it together. And if I can do anything to help him, I'm going to. And so I feel like I'm in service to him because he's going to be in the workforce after I'm gone, and he's making decisions that are going to impact that community for years to come. So yeah, it's a role that I think most military folks can transition into, because most of the military leaders that I worked around were inspirational leaders. They weren't what you see in the movies.
Do you have any, it's not a sidebar, I do have some elected officials that listen to this podcast from time to time, and obviously you just alluded to your current city manager who had maybe some reservations or concerns, or just wanted to, kind of get your pulse when it came to some of that aspect of, how rigid were you going to be type deal. But, we're going to have obviously city managers who are listening to this podcast who might be recruiting individuals from the military to come into local government. What are any sort of personality traits? I mean, obviously you've worked in that environment for a long time with the police department, with the military. Are there any red flag personality traits that you feel like, hey, I'd be careful if something like this happened, or if I saw this sort of characteristic or personality trait in terms of wanting to select someone to be on my team?
Well, I think if the interview is all about me, I think that's a red flag, right? The interview should be about, what has your team accomplished? What have you helped others accomplish? What things in your background have you participated in that have benefited the greater good, versus look at me. I think to me that's a little bit of a red flag.
Okay. So you got into Maze, and Maze is technically your first, I would say, administrative type position in municipal government, right? In terms of executive leadership, if you kind of put together I'm putting that PD experience to a sort of a separate category, right?
Yeah.
What has been your biggest sort of takeaways, or just things that have kind of caught your attention or surprised you, or maybe haven't surprised you with respect to that transition? I had Matt Ginsby on the podcast recently, been a few months now. He coincidentally, as you know, the audience may not remember, but Ginsby was the former police chief for the city of Mays, and then he went off to become a first-time city administrator in a little town called Keachai, which is just north of Wichita. And I'm kind of curious to see what you've sort of learned or experienced in working in that local government executive role that maybe have caught you by surprise.
Well, I think one of the things that caught me by surprise was I remember my boss, he met me for breakfast before he even offered me the job, and he's got like a list of 12 things, and I've got these 12 things here. And he's new to the job too, by the way. He'd been hired like 90 days prior.
Yeah. He's from McPherson, I believe.
Yeah. So a little bit bigger community. And so he's got this list of 12 things. He goes, I've got these 12 things, and I really don't know who's going to do what, but he goes, I need to figure out who's going to be best at what. And I remember looking down at that list, and one of the things that was on there was economic development, right? And I'm like, well, whatever it is, that's the one thing that I don't want to touch. Right. So I don't want anything to do with that. I'll deal with budget. I'll deal with finances. You can give me all of the citizens that want to come every day and complain. I'll take them. And I think what really surprised me is, and this is one of I think the good aspects of hiring a former military officer, is it doesn't matter what the mission is. If the mission is killing bad guys in the desert, or the mission is making sure that your team is the first one to cross the finish line at the 5K, you're going to figure out a way to make it happen. That's just what military officers do. It's about the mission of the day. And so I got in there and I looked around and I said, okay, what needs to be accomplished? And he never really told me, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. He said, we're going to figure it out. Well, I just started taking off and getting things done. And I found that economic development is one of my biggest drivers. I love it.
Really?
I love it. And I think part of it, so I work with a consultant.
Can I step on you a little bit here? I should probably preface this. Last year, the city of Mays was designated as the fastest growing city in Kansas, right? Or one of them. It's pretty right.
It went 2 or 3 years running.
Yeah.
I think we're number 2 this year.
Is it
now,
number 2?
As of right now, yeah. So.
And there's been and for the audience, there's been a monster development boom along the main corridor, which abuts with the city of Wichita. It's called Mays Road, that runs into the city of Mays, and there's also been a lot of housing development. So I just want to give a little contextual background, because economic development and growth has been high on the radar for Maze
Yeah.
for quite some time now.
Yeah, and housing has been, but what we've lagged in is retail commercial.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we're really working now. We've got a couple of projects that are going to be breaking ground in the spring that I can't talk about yet, but it's exciting. And, so to kind of, I first thing I did was I got in there and I started just blasting emails out to all these retail and C-store and everybody else going, hey, you need to come to Maze. Here's what we got going on. Here's, and I got a call from a guy. He goes, you know what? He goes, you're the 5th city today that emailed me. And I said, I'm just going to give you some advice. And he goes, you're not going to win anybody over because every day we hear from the city that thinks we need to be there, right? Every day it's a different city that we're the reason. And so I was a little bit disheartened, but I had sent off several emails. And I hooked up with a guy on LinkedIn that runs a retail consulting business. He's out of Oklahoma. And believe it or not, he's an old retired cop that went to apply for a police chief job, and the city manager didn't offer him the police chief job, but hired him as his economic development coordinator.
No kidding.
And it rolled into, he started his own consulting business. He's been at that since 2007. He's worked in 39 states. He's worked with over 525 cities, and he's just got this formula to success. I think it's because he's an old cop and he knows how to talk to people at their level, whatever their level is, right? So we've been working and we've been having a good time, and I really enjoy him. But about 4 months after I sent out all those emails, I get a phone call one day at my desk, and this guy starts talking to me, and he goes, hey, yeah, we're looking at this property and thinking about bringing my store to your city. And he's kind of humming around. Then he goes, can I send you an email with a curb cut plan? And I'm like, what? I'm like, you've been more than thinking. You're already planning the site, right? And I said, how'd you find out about us? I figured he talked to
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, I thought he talked to the retail guy, right? And he goes, you sent me an email about 4 months ago. And he goes, I didn't email you back, but I started looking around to confirm what you were telling me. And you were telling me the truth.
Oh, wow.
Your city's growing like crazy. We need to be there. That site didn't work out, but we have since, it gets even funnier because the same guy, I'm like, I'm going to get him in my city now. And we had this other corner that for 10 years, this company had been trying to lease this old building, and it's an eyesore, and it's right on a busy corner. And every time you talk to a real estate agent and talk to somebody else, they're like, nah, they won't sell it.
Are you talking about the Pizza Hut building?
Yeah. They won't sell it. They only want to lease it, whatever.
I'm gonna give a little contextual relevance too for the audience too.
Yeah.
So Wichita is the birthplace of Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a Pizza Hut location up on 53rd in Maze, and they had another location that was basically at 37th in Maze for the longest time. And then shortly after the pandemic is when the one on 53rd in Maze kind of went out of business and they shut it down, right?
Yeah.
But it's been sitting there, and we love Pizza Hut in Wichita. There's a museum to Pizza Hut for, I think, at the WSU, right, or the old franchise or whatever. So just the context for folks, we love Pizza Hut here, but there's been this old Pizza Hut building sitting empty for years now.
So this building's sitting there, and it's on like the best corner in town, and it's just it's a dump, right? It's the parking lot's caved in. It holds water, mosquitoes, a whole bit. So I keep hearing from everybody, oh yeah, he's got a building down south on a corner he won't sell either, whatever else. So the original founder of the company that is the franchisee for Pizza Hut here, I won't name them on your podcast, but the original founder, he passed away in December, right? And so I came in, I think it was probably April, and I was just froggy that day. It was a Friday morning, and Friday mornings are they're like my favorite day of the week, right? And I'm all caffeinated up. I'm probably 3 cups in. I said, you know what? I'm just going to call the president of this company. I'm going to demand he sell that property. So I Google this guy, and I find his phone number out there on the web, and I call him up, and I can't remember his name right now. I called him up. I said, hey, this is so-and-so. I'm deputy city manager in Maze. How are you this morning? He goes, great. I said, you got a minute to talk? He goes, yeah. I said, you're killing me, dude. He goes, what? I said, you've got this dumpy old building on the corner that nobody wants to lease from you. They don't want to lease the land under it. They want to own the corner, and you won't sell it. And until I develop that corner, I can't develop around it.
Yeah.
I need you to sell it. Would you take a phone call if I find somebody to buy that property? Yeah, I guess I would. And so we just talked to the engineers the other day. We're pulling the building permit. That building's coming down.
Nice.
And I think yeah, we got the property sold off.
That's amazing.
I put the guy that emailed me or called me back on the email. I put him directly in touch with the president of the company. The deal happened. We got the real estate agents out of the way.
That's great.
Got the two guys that could make decisions. That corner is going to redevelop, and I really believe that once we see that one building come out of the ground, it's going to spur redevelopment around it.
Yeah, because the other couple corners need some work as well.
Yeah, one of them's for sale. So so it's just
I'm hearing some great news for me as a resident.
Yeah,
I patronize that corridor, so that's nice.
And it's a great corridor because it's right off the highway there. The
easy access,
highway.
Easy on off.
Lots of gas sales, lots of food sales. And you got the big school district there that teachers need someplace to go grab something.
Yeah.
After school or during lunch breaks or whatever. And there's just not anything right over there. So this is a great start, but we're not finished.
I love it.
We got a lot to go.
I love it.
So economic development, I think that's the surprise. It's like, wow, I really love this stuff. I love getting out and mixing it up with of course, when I worked for the school district, I did a $120 million bond issue. And we rebuilt, tore down, or revitalized 19 facilities. And it was all about construction and working with the engineers and architects.
Which is cool, but it's different, right? Because those are kind of self-contained projects that if you get the land acquired, you basically control your own destiny, do whatever you want to do. But when you're doing economic development, there's so many moving parts. It's dynamic. You need to coax and cajole and threaten. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, no. And the retail consultant, he told the city council this when he first came to Mays to talk to us. He goes, "He who controls the land, controls development." Right?
100%.
And that's stuck with me ever since.
Yeah. So, we teased at the very beginning of the episode, the intro, Joe, about your father working to the age of 70. And that was sort of the genesis of us getting on the phone and talking and say, hey, I'd like to flesh this out because I'm 48. I'm not near retirement yet, but I wrestle with this whole thing because from time to time, I read stories on my news scan about city managers who pass away shortly after they retire.
Yeah.
I read stories about city managers who are working to a very heady age, 70 plus. And I'm thinking, man, do I want to work till I'm 70? I'm not sure. I enjoy work. Yeah. I really do. In fact, I think sometimes I enjoy work a little bit too much because I've talked about in this podcast that I have a lack of hobbies and activities that, outside of work that would keep me busy. And so, I've had conversations in private with other colleagues and peers about, what their thought process is when it comes to retirement and how they plan on approaching and attacking that. I kind of wanted to just flesh out that topic in this podcast a little bit more. And so maybe what might be a good way to start is just for you to maybe give us a brief overview of your father and what his experience was and what you experienced being a young man watching him as you grew up into adulthood.
Yeah. So actually he died at 62, so it's even younger than that, right? Yeah. And now I'm approaching that age. I'm not quite there yet, but man, I'm having people that I went to high school with passing away or getting sick. And, so life's finite.
Well, I didn't realize he passed. I misunderstood that. I was confused with the city manager. He retired at 70. Yeah, you're right. So he retired. Yeah, he died at 62.
62, right?
Yeah.
So my dad was he was a store manager for a major retail grocer in the Midwest. He had opportunity to go to corporate, and he loved the customers, so he refused to go. He stayed in the store. But he worked, his idea of a work week was Monday through Saturday, anywhere from 2 a.m. to 6:30 in the evening, 6 days a week. And then on Sunday, he would go in at 4 and stay till 10. Part of his early morning stuff was, back then the grocery stores weren't open overnight. And so he didn't trust anybody with the keys to the store. So if the milk truck showed up at 2 or the bread truck showed up at 4 or whatever, he'd go over and personally meet him. And then he always did the sale ads that came out in the Wednesday paper back when we had papers. He was the one that the corporate over in Hutchinson would trust to look at the sale ad and make sure that it was ready for print. So he did that kind of stuff early in the morning. Helped clean the store. I mean, he was a pretty humble guy. I could recall him going over at night and helping they had this overnight custodian, an elderly African American man, and my dad would go over and help him polish the floors at night. So 6 days a week, and the seventh day he considered his day of rest. He'd work 6 hours and he'd go play a round of golf. And he'd do it all over again. So, he did that, and his all he ever talked about was he was putting all his money away because he was going to buy a patio home. and he was going to retire at 65 because that was the retirement age back then. And he was going to buy a patio home cash, and he was going to play golf the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a lifelong smoker, World War II veteran. He just didn't make it. He got cancer and passed away.
Yeah. I can see you getting really emotional and shaken up about it. So I'm going to give you a minute and I'm going to talk here. I'm sorry, bud. Yeah. Your old man was a part of a different generation and dying breed because it's this country is very blessed to have had multiple generations of men and women who have just got some hard bark on them, as it's been said in one of the sayings, right? Where people just go to work and then grind it out, and God bless them, you know. And it's a lot of men out there who they didn't have an off button, and you watch him work his life away, and saving for that one time, or when he's going to enjoy it, and it didn't happen. I assume the cancer snuck up on him pretty quick. Or
I mean, of course, he was one of those guys. He's from that same generation. It's like, well, I don't go to the doctor.
Of course,
trust the doctor or whatever. So he was, by the time he decided that his chest cold was bad enough to go to the doctor. I mean, he was swollen up and full of cancer.
Yeah,
he lasted about 90 days.
Oh, it's terrible.
Terrible. And it's just interesting because growing up.
So how old were you when he passed away?
20. I think I was 21. I was actually in the police academy. I remember that. So, my entire life growing up, I remember my dad taking 2 vacations. He would send my mom and I on vacation, and he would stay at work.
Yeah.
But he took one golf vacation, and he took one cruise in 21 years.
It's crazy.
And so, you look at that and you go, wow. And I'm not believe me, I'm not sitting here to advocate for the YOLO lifestyle where you spend your money as it comes in the door because
of course
you hope to retire. But I also had a brother that died at 62. So
no way.
Yeah. So he died of he was a computer programmer and a computer sales guy and software engineer and did all that stuff for years. Never around a hazardous environment. Never smoked.
Yeah.
Ended up with a lung disease. Passed away at 62. And so you never know. You never know when your last day on this earth is.
Yeah.
And so you got to think about that, right? So for those of us that are fortunate enough to be married to the same person for many, many years, I've been married to the same lady for 33 years. It's been awesome.
Right.
I was a selfish young man. I'm not too sure what I wanted when I got married, but and then you get the kids, and when you get the kids between you, it gets really tough. But we've stuck it out. We've had some not so good times. We've had some great times. But as we get older, I realize that I want to spend my time with her. My last 5 or 10 years on this earth, not sitting at a desk grinding away on a W-2 job,
right?
Answering to somebody else. My wife deserves some of my time.
Right.
Just put up with enough of me being gone. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how old are you now, and what's the age you got between you and your brother?
Yeah, so I'm 58. My brother died in 2018, so he was quite a bit older than me. I've got he was my oldest brother, so I've got a middle brother and a sister, and my middle brother's 7 years older than me. I'm thinking he was born in 54, so he was born 13 years ahead of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he was almost out of the house by the time I was old enough to start like really remembering things.
Yeah.
And so I'm not gonna say was really close with that brother.
Sure.
But he was my brother.
Yeah, of course.
And I knew him, and I stopped by and saw him. He lived in North Carolina, and I had stopped by and saw him 2017 and hadn't been out there for years. Luckily, I got to see him in 2017, and in 2018, it's like, oh yeah, he's got this disease and he's kind of sick. And I don't think they ever really told us how bad it was, but it was a lot worse than they were telling those of us that weren't there.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's those kind of things that kind of put it all in perspective. You can, especially in city management, you're not making poverty wages, right?
Right.
You're making decent money.
Yeah.
And the only thing
and if you're smart with your money, you should be living a fairly comfortable retirement.
Yeah. So, unless lifestyle creep has really captured you, you should be in a position to retire, at least when you can draw Social Security.
Right.
I know one of the biggest things that holds people back, and I'm a study of personal finance and a study of the retirement, the complex retirement scenarios that you can run across. And, the thing that holds people in the workforce the longest probably right now is medical care,
health
right?
insurance.
65.
Yeah.
But when you can comfortably step out of the workforce and discover who you are, I think you owe it not only to yourself, but you owe it to your family.
Yeah, but so many people don't have the opportunity to step out and discover themselves in that sense, right? Because we kind of go from, our whole life is kind of programmed if we're not careful, right? We're born, we go to school till we're, graduate high school at 18. We quickly jump into college, right? Because that's what we're supposed to do, right? Then we get our bachelor's. We might even stay and get our master's at the same time or, in succession. And then we jump into the workforce. And before you know it, you're 60-some years old, and you really have not even had a chance to kind of even get outside the quote-unquote rat race, right? You've just been on the hamster wheel for 60 years of some version of it, right?
Right.
And then you get out and you get that retirement age, or if you have the ability to retire, and you're like, what the hell do I do with my life now, right? And I think that's a lot of it. When I kind of getting back to this idea of retirement and when's a good time and what have you, and why do men especially seem to pass away shortly after they retire, at least in a disproportionate percentage, right? Not that, the majority of men are doing it, but it seems to be an inordinate amount of men seem to seemingly pass away shortly after they quit working. And everyone I talk to says, well, it's because they don't have another purpose outside of work. They don't know anything to do. They don't know, they just don't know what to do outside of work and how to basically find purpose with their life.
Yeah. I remember when I went through the police academy, of course you learn all the laws, you learn the tactical stuff, but they also teach you a little bit about trying to live a healthy career. They, they don't want you. And I just remember one of the biggest things during the academy was, the average police officer is dead within 5 years after retirement.
Yes.
And they used to always attribute it to stress, right? And I think there's some truth to that. So, that's where healthy lifestyle habits come in. You've got to exercise to burn that stress off and release those endorphins. You got to try to eat fairly healthy. I'm trying, Doc, if you're listening. He chastised me again the other day. So he's like, it's time you start acting like your age and start eating right. And so I'm really trying, but that's, and the American diet sucks.
I know.
It just sucks, right? It's more expensive to eat healthy, and it's harder to eat healthy.
Well, I was just talking to my wife about this. So we are sitting in my house in Wichita, where I'm here by myself because my wife is in LA. And I was literally on a walk last night talking to her about, and we were talking about how it's hard to eat healthy when you're living a quote, single, because it's so expensive. And then you throw in the meal prep time and the cleanup time, and it's just like, it's easier just to run down to Brahms or whatever and get a burger and fries and call it a day. And it's rough, And I told my wife, I was like, if I want to go to Costco or Sam's Club and buy in bulk, then I'm stuck eating ham and cheese sandwiches for every 14 days in a row for lunch. You know what I mean? Otherwise, the bread's going to go bad or the meat's going to go bad. Or it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. So it's
you're talking to someone who needs to lose weight myself. So I'm up over 200, and I should be below 200.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'll keep my weight between me and my doctor. So. No, I'm trying. I've lost 6 pounds in the last 2 weeks. So, but it's just interesting. I think if you're a 40-year-old out there listening to this right now, a 45-year-old, I think you're going to see a point, an inflection point, or your perspective is going to change a little bit as you start to get into your later 50s, because at least I feel it. My wife talks about it openly. You start to realize that your hourglass has less sand in it than it used to, right?
I'm there with you, brother.
The sand is starting to fill the bottom and there's not a lot left in top, but you don't know how fast that sand's going to run out. And so I think
it sure is dropping faster. I tell you, it sure seems like it's dropping kind
of start thinking about your mortality, and I'm not to bring the show down. You start think about your mortality. You go, 100%. Man, there's things out there that I still want to see and do, and I have the ability to go do it here in a couple of years. Now, full disclosure, people are listening to this right now, and they're going, "Okay, this guy's sitting here talking about retiring and going and doing things. Why aren't you retired?" Right? Well, we all have our
still got to pay bills.
Yeah, we got access to grind. I'm fortunate that I have a child that's in medical school, and the cost of healthcare once again is just outrageous for him as a 23-year-old student in perfect health. Like, he should have such low healthcare
Right. What's
costs.
the risk?
And what the school charges him to be on a student plan is outrageous. So for me, I can keep him on the family plan until age 26.
Right.
And so I can work until he's out of medical school. A couple more years. My wife's got about a year and a half left. She's going to leave work at about 56. Yeah, I got a couple of years left, and then I think we're going to call it good.
Well, that medical school's pretty cheap too, right? Sending a kid through medical.
Well, we've been pretty lucky there. He was smart enough.
Kicking ass.
Yeah, he was smart enough to get a full ride,
Nice.
academic scholarship through his bachelor's degree. And we had punched away some money. And
what's his name? Let's give a shout out to your son. What's his name?
Josh.
Way to go, Josh.
Yeah. So
Dad's proud of you.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So he got that, and you never knew that was going to happen.
Of course.
Right. So
yeah.
we put away money
Can't
into one of those,
expect
those Roth education accounts. And so
Yeah.
that kind of grew. And then, because I was already an old dog when they started handing out the post 9/11 GI Bill, and I already had my master's degree, I didn't need it. I was able to transfer that to my kids.
That's right. I
Right.
forgot about that. Yeah.
So he's actually doing pretty well with his billing, his medical school billing right now, but I don't want him taking out student loans
Yeah.
for healthcare. I don't want him taking out student loans for hot dogs,
Right.
or whatever he's eating, because he's single by himself.
Right.
So
He doesn't eat
he's
healthy,
eating
by the
ham
way.
and cheese sandwiches every night too. But I don't want him doing that. And so we're going to try to get him.
Well, hell, Joe, we're in society's got to the point now where you can put a grilled cheese sandwich on a layaway plan nowadays. I mean, it's so insane what we're doing with our children and with our lifestyle in terms of everything's getting financed.
I really want to see him hit the ground running. And we have the ability to, and I don't feel any obligation to, but we're going to help him out until he gets out of med school.
Yeah.
And it's the least we can do, because and it's not about my son. I've met some brilliant young minds, and that's what it takes for those kids to get through. I've watched him, and it takes brilliant minds to get through medical school and to go into the profession they're going into, and we don't have enough of them.
No.
So anything I can do to support that, I don't even see it as my son. I'm supporting that mind
Building
going
this
out
country,
in
right?
service. Yeah.
You're building this country. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty awesome to be able to witness that.
Yeah. It takes even more than that, right? Because not only do they have to be really intelligent, but there's perseverance and all kinds of stuff that goes with it, and being able to withstand the ups and downs and the valleys that go along. But I'm sure he's had some dark days in terms of trying to navigate this journey.
Oh yeah,
I would imagine.
Well, it's a 7-day-a-week job.
Yeah.
They don't give those kids a break. I
Right.
mean, he's in his second year of med school, doing fine, doing great, not having any problems. But if he takes a break from studying, he's worrying about why he's not studying. I mean, he can't relax.
So getting back to you personally.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
Josh, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad to hear about your son. He sounds like an amazing young man. That's awesome. When you look at your situation, and we talk about that stat that you heard when you're in the police department, right? 5 years out of retirement. We hear the similar stats for firefighters, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about just men in general seem to have this propensity for passing away relatively soon after retirement. What steps are you taking? First of all, do you have any fear of yourself being in that boat, or do you think you're in a different situation?
Well,
I guess. What are your thoughts on that?
So I had a heart attack at 50.
No kidding.
51.
Wow.
So 2019, September 18th, 2019.
So a year after your brother passes away, you had a heart attack.
I had a heart attack, but that was not because I have coronary artery disease.
It wasn't from the Big Macs?
No, it was actually it was stupidity on my part, to be honest with you. So because I watched my father die, and I watched my brother die, and of course I was in the military where they require certain levels of physical fitness. I've always considered physical fitness to be important to me.
Yeah.
And I was getting into this. I said I was an old dog.
And we're not doing video today because you're sitting in my kitchen, right?
Yeah.
But Joe's pretty yoked. He's pretty yoked for 58.
Yeah. So we've got I told you I was an old dog in uniform.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to let the young guys show me up at the annual fitness test, right? So I'm out there killing it. And my routine at the time was about an hour of kinetic weights, right? Heavy weightlifting. And then I'd go run for a half hour on a treadmill. And then I'd finish out by going back over and jumping on the bench and pounding out the chest a little bit. And I was doing that for several weeks. And I would get out of the shower.
As a 51-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd get out of the shower and I was just nauseous. And, I usually recover by the time I got dressed and started heading on to work. And one morning, and one part of my routine is I started leaving for the gym to go drive to work. I'd call my wife, make sure she's up to go to school or her job. And one morning I called her. I said, man, I'm just not recovering. I'm not feeling good. I said, I'm still nauseous. I said, maybe I'll recover later. I drove on into work. I went right into a meeting where we were having a very, I don't want to call it contentious, but we were having problems with a vendor, and this vendor wasn't delivering. And he shows up and he's not organized. And I'm sitting here in this meeting and I'm looking at my maintenance supervisor at the time. And I'm like, is this meeting really affecting me? Because to be honest with you, I don't get upset. Things don't upset me, but I could feel my blood pressure rising. And I'm like, is this really upsetting me? And we get out of the meeting. I stop by my secretary's desk, by this time I'm turned into heartburn. I grab some heartburn tabs, throw them in. I go on into my office. And of course, at that time I'm working for a school board. So they're my elected body. And, this is a safety project. So I'm typing out an email to them, kind of telling them what's going on with this project. And the heartburn's not clearing up, man. And those heartburn tabs usually just knock it out for me within a couple minutes. I'm like, okay, what's going on? I walked by my secretary. I said, hey, I'll be out for a little bit. I've got an errand to run. I drove myself over to the little emergency medical ER that was in the community that I was working in. I said, hey, would you guys just check my blood pressure? And so they put me on the blood pressure cuff, and holy crap, man, I was like 120 over 160, which is like running, Yeah. And they ran some tests, and it took a few hours. And sure enough, I had signs of in my blood work that I had was having a heart attack. So they cart me off to the hospital, and I get to meet a new best friend for the rest of my life, my cardiologist. He did a heart cath, and you're laying there on the table, right? You're 51 years old. Your brother died last year.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because the EMS crew was handing me nitro. And I'm like, why are you guys giving me nitro? Oh, don't worry about it. Just take one. So they're not really telling me because they're trying to keep me calm,
right? Which
is fine. I'm pretty calm about it, a little worried, but the cardiologist he sticks this tool up my arm. He doesn't go up. They used to go through the groin. Now they go through your arm. He goes to my arm, and you're wide awake, but they give you a medicine where you can't move, right? So you can see everything, you can hear everything.
That was really weird.
I could actually feel him going up my arm until he got about halfway up. And then you hear him go, what's that? And the tech goes, I don't know. Because they're looking at a screen, and I could barely see off to the side. I'm like, this is great, man. You're sitting here hearing all this, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, well, he works at it for a couple minutes, and he starts counting off in like millimeters. And like, there's just this intuition. I've never been in a cath lab in my life. My father-in-law had stents, but when he starts counting out in millimeters, you immediately know what he's counting for.
Yeah.
Right. And so I ended up with 2 stents, spent 3 days in the hospital, got released. I was in there on a Wednesday, got released on a Saturday, was back in his office the following Friday on the treadmill running, and got a clean bill of health. But the interesting part of that was your body, your arteries and your vessels are just like hydraulic hoses. And what he told me had happened was I had gotten that hydraulic pressure up from all that weightlifting and all that running. And then I went back over and I loaded all that weight back on my chest. And I had actually torn my left anterior descending artery, which is the widowmaker. And I was 90% occluded. And had I not driven myself to the ER, I would have died in my office, and nobody could have saved me outside of a hospital.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so if that wasn't a wake-up call, right?
Yeah.
So now I carry 2 stents, but the military let me continue to serve for 6 years. I continued to run and pass fitness tests. I have no long-term effects other than I take a baby aspirin and get to see my cardiologist once a year. But to be honest with you, I think that every man over 50 years old should be seeing a cardiologist once a year.
So Okay.
So,
Let me unpack this, Joe.
yeah.
So what actually caused the heart? Like, I mean, I heard the story, but I'm looking. So you didn't. There wasn't dietary based. Like,
No,
what you didn't have to do anything
no,
different to after you. I don't. I'm looking. I'm a
no.
little
So
lost.
if you read about it,
Hmm.
it's called SCAD, or sudden coronary arterial dissection.
Okay.
It's a phenomenon, and actually, young pregnant women are the most prone to it.
No
Believe it or
kidding.
not. The next most prone group is people that like to weight lift, and weight lift heavy.
Okay.
So I just happened to be that person that, I tore that artery. That hydraulic pressure just got so heavy in my chest that it just started ripping that artery apart, and the body recognized the issue and clotted it off, but in the process tried to clot off the entire artery.
Yeah, which leads to you possibly dying.
Yeah,
If you don't
yeah, yeah.
open
So
it up, right?
yeah, so we just sit here and talk about it. It's like we're
Oof.
talking about sports, but
Yeah.
it was just the weirdest thing, and my wife was not happy. My wife was pretty pissed at me.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
She's probably even more pissed at me now because I lift heavier than I did back then. So, but I don't lift.
You're living differently,
I,
though.
I lift differently. I don't
Yes.
lift as long, and,
Yeah.
and I don't run right before, right after.
Yeah.
I keep those act. Of course, I don't run anymore anyway. The military ruined my hips, so here I am.
Okay. So walk me through just your mental landscape when your brother passed away a year before. You go through this gut check of all gut checks, right? And you have this very sobering experience, and you're only 51-ish
Yeah.
or whatever. That's
Yeah.
I'm 48, and I got to
Yeah.
tell you, I know this sounds lame, and I'm sure everyone's whatever, but it's just
Yeah.
like, at 48, my brain doesn't feel 48, right? My
No.
body starts to feel a little. It's definitely my body knows I'm not 28,
Yeah.
right? But my body doesn't. Is my body really 48? My
Yeah.
my brain definitely doesn't think it's 48. And I remember being a young man, thinking, man, when you're 40, you're ancient, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
in
yeah.
my teens. And now I look at it, I'm like, oh, holy crap, am I really going to be 50 in 2 years? Like, that's a mental effort right there, right?
Yeah.
Did you change anything as far as your mental outlook on life? I mean,
Oh.
did you went to your father's
Oh.
situation? Like, walk me through that
s-
evolution, and also what kind of conversations do you have with your wife? Because I mean, your wife's not trying to be a widow.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's around the same age as you, I assume. But I mean, it's like
Yeah.
she ain't trying to be a widow at 50.
No,
Yeah.
and I think, believe it or not, I think there's quite a bit of guilt that I almost caused her to be a widow.
I bet.
I wouldn't wish that upon her.
Uh huh.
Um, Not that she needs me, but I think she needs me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some days I know that she would say no, but there's just things that she and I have out on the horizon that we want to experience together, and I almost took that from
Yeah,
her.
you almost deprived
and
her of it.
it was all on me. It was my fault. So there's some guilt there, but I will tell you that, man, I've always had a little bit of a sense of humor, but I don't take life too seriously anymore. I mean, there is nothing in life that is worth getting upset about or dying. I mean, I used to be that guy that, like, oh God, is there a scratch on my car?
Yeah.
Whatever. Now,
The intensity's at 10, right? Or 11, right?
now
Yeah.
it's like, whatever, man. It's just a material thing. It can be replaced. It can be fixed if it's even that important. I dented my truck last year and I haven't fixed it yet.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's
Who
just
is this guy, right?
Yeah,
Who am I?
It's like my wife would be like, "Who are you? You're not the guy I married."
Yeah.
And I really have calmed down. And you know what? Not only has it not,
It's liberating, isn't it? to a
it's
degree?
liberating. It's not changed much as far as my joy for life or anything like that. But I think what I have realized is that you got to stop taking everything so serious.
Yeah.
And
You got to take the right things seriously.
yeah.
We take the wrong things seriously, especially as
Yeah.
men, I think.
Yeah.
I was my brother and I were having a little text exchange this week. I'm a big country music fan, and so I'm not sure if you like Zach Bryan
Yeah.
or Gavin Adcock. So I like both these guys. And Zach Bryan, admittedly, has been a little bit of a douchebag the last 12 months to 18 months or whatever. I like him. I like his music, but I think he's been a little bit of a douche. And anyway, there's some sort of feud going on with him and this other country singer named Gavin Adcock. And my brother sends me this video of Zach Bryan literally climbing over some razor wire to get into a concert venue, a festival venue, so he could fight, Gavin Adcock because he's pissed off or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I told my brother, I go, and I used to be a hothead. I had a pretty intense temper as a young man and well into my adulthood. And I told my brother, I was texting him. I said, I go, my 48-year-old brain just can't comprehend being worth $400 million and not just buying a ticket instead and going to.
Yeah.
But my 20-some-year-old brain can comprehend jumping over some razor wire and cutting myself up to get in a fight. But I just can't. I'm just not there anymore. And I remember when I was a young man and a not so young man, because it wasn't my best trait. It was my temper. And I just remember getting so riled up and pissed off about things. And now I look at it and be like, gosh, I don't. What for what?
Yeah.
For what? And the consequences are every time I look at a road rage incident, I think that could have been me because I was kind of notorious for getting into some road rage incidents. I won't elaborate, but it got anyway. And I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's some scary stuff, you know. And the other thing that you hit on earlier in this interview that I kind of wanted to circle back to because I thought you were going to kind of go down this direction, but you were talking about basically on the back nine of your life, right? You have more good years behind you than in front of you, right? Generally speaking.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a crazy thing to really kind of sit there and ponder and think about. And I think about this on a regular basis. I talk to my wife and I talk to others, and your father passed away at 62. I tell my wife, I go, yeah, I mean, statistically, I'm going to live to be 68. But there's a good chance I don't have 20 years left in me at 48. I mean, that's a pretty heavy thing to ponder.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've just come to appreciate more is that it seems like with each passing year, time goes by faster than it ever did before. I know it sounds so cliche to say, but I think I think there's got to be a scientific fact. I know we're all in the same universe and the same planet, but I'm pretty damn sure time's going faster for me than it is for others.
You realize we just put away the Christmas tree and it's about time to pull it back out, right?
So, oh my gosh! And the other thing too, I think about for those the younger generation that might be listening to the podcast, I remember my wife and I talk about this, how much time we literally waste and fritter away on people who do not deserve to have our time, ridiculous interactions with, just, the whole courting ritual of everything too, and just dating and mating and all that. But it's just like, how much time do you as an individual waste when you look back and think back, your 20s, I spent all my time with these people or doing that. And it's like, for what? And, the older I get, generally speaking, I just want to hang out with my wife, kind of like what you alluded to, right? Like I like meeting people and I like interacting with people and stuff. But generally speaking, I'll share this this little story. I was God, this is gonna sound kind of lame, but a few months back in late May, I drove out to Annapolis, Maryland to drop off a vehicle for my son because my son's in the Naval Academy. He can't have a vehicle in his plebe year. And he likes to drive like his dad. We're drivers. We like to go out and just meditate and drive and think and be with our thoughts. And so I'm like, of course I got to get my son a car because So I was going to drive him a car, and I'm driving through these places that I'd never seen before, parts of the country I've never been to, and I'm thinking, man, I kind of want to check this out, but my wife's not with me. Yeah. And it's almost like, what's the point if I can't share this with my wife or enjoy this with my wife? Like, 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have cared. I'd be like, I'm just do my thing, or like, this is, I'm an explorer. Because I'm an explorer by nature, too. I like to just explore new areas and what have you. But, not having my wife on my side, it's just like, well, what's the point of me having this experience if she can't be there with me to enjoy it, right?
No, that's not lame at all. So, one of my last schools I went to this joint advanced warfighter school out in Norfolk, Virginia. And I'd have a couple of weekends here and there that I could be free to do whatever I wanted. And I had a rental car. And so here am I, I'm driving out on the, I don't know what they call them now, the little strips of sand that go way out into the ocean on North Carolina. So you can get out to the lighthouses and stuff. Yeah. And my wife is the ocean nut, right? Uh-huh. And believe it or not, I've got this guilt going on because she's not experiencing it with me. So, but while I'm there, I'm collecting all the maps and I'm talking a U.S. park. So it's actually a U.S. park, the National Forest Service actually manages some of those. And so I'm stopping at their little guest centers and I'm picking stuff up because my ideal retirement drive is to hook up to an RV and haul her all the way from Florida up through North Carolina on those stupid little and see all the lighthouses and eat the seafood and stick our feet in the ocean and just do that kind of stuff. And you can't do that if you work until 70. Because your body at some point will not be able to take those trips, will not be able to do those kinds of things. I told you that I was kind of a study of personal finance, retirement planning. There's a couple of guys that I follow really, really strongly, but then there's some others that I tune in and out on. And there's so many studies out there that have been done that one of the biggest retirement regrets of people that have been retired in their mid 70s is that they didn't retire. I'm not saying maybe they retired at 68, 69, that they didn't retire 5 years sooner.
Right.
So they had 5 more years that their body still had the energy to go do those things, because you have what they call the go-go years, which are your 60s and into maybe 72, 73. And then they start calling them the no-go years because those are the years that you're seriously, you can't do it anymore. You can't independently go hook up to a fifth wheel with your wife and haul off across country.
Yeah. Just not going to happen.
Yeah. So,
I'm getting ready to go out to Pennsylvania to visit a family member with my wife and her mother, who's in her, I forget how old she is now. She might be close to 75.
Yeah.
And we're talking about going up to Niagara Falls, right, which is going to be about a 4-hour drive from where her brother. So her brother's in the military. He's stationed in Pennsylvania. He's got relocated. We're going to go out to visit, and we're kicking around this idea of taking her mother up to Niagara Falls. She's in her early to mid 70s. I forget how old, but just going on a 4-hour drive each way from the location we're going to be, that's taxing. That's tough.
Yeah.
And I think we as human beings, we naively fail to understand that we think that the person we are today, we're going to be that person in 20 years, or we're going to be that person in 5 years, and it's not. That's not the case. And we delude ourselves and we deny ourselves reality. And you're right. And it's like, don't wait. I'm gonna get a little personal here. I've shared on this podcast before that my parents were drug addicts and incarcerated in prison. And so for 2 different stretches of time, I lived with my aunt and uncle. And my aunt was my mom's sister, and my uncle was her husband, and he was an oral surgeon. And he loved his work. Like, just ate it up. Like if he could go do pull wisdom teeth 7 days a week, he would have done it. But he and I remember one time I was a young man. I was probably like 10 years old or something like that. And what would happen when we were living with them, there would be like during a Christmas break, I would go visit some family, and then they would often kind of go do a skiing trip, right? The family skiing trip. And my uncle, he was skiing one year and collided with a tree. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but messed up his shoulder, dislocated, broke his shoulder or whatever. And he's a wealthy guy, but he had his Porsche. He had his Porsche 930 turbo he loved. And it was always in the shop. It was always down though. Like he loved that car. It was his first. Porsche. I know he loved it, but it was always down. And the only vehicle he had at his disposal to get to work was his RV, like a big ass RV, right?
Oh, no.
And so he was so adamant about going to work because he just did not take a day off that he drove his RV, and they lived up in the hills of this really nice area, whatever. But he'd drive one arm with his RV down into work every day until things got better. I just and I just loved it, right? But the point of bringing this up is he loved work, and it's always work's good. Work in and of itself is good, and I'm not poo-pooing it, obviously, because I think that's a very important part of American society, the Protestant work ethic. I won't get political, but I think it's something that's very important and key to our success as a nation. But my aunt was about 10 years younger than he was, and he worked basically until the day he died. He ended up getting some sort of a brain cancer situation, and it killed her when he got diagnosed with it because it was a very sudden, shocking thing. And his name's Randy, And so she's always like, "Oh, Randy," like that was just like kind of like, oh, I remember her saying that. But she always wanted to go on trips, so she would go on trips by herself and do missionary trips on church functions in Africa and safaris on it and stuff like that. And she always wanted to do trips with her husband because she wanted to spend time with him. And she always hoped that at some point, because he had more money than he needed, like he was very comfortable, not insanely rich, but very comfortable. And it killed her because he gets brain cancer, and they never got to spend any time together. And he died in his early 70s, if I recall correctly. And and he was very healthy up until that point. It just came very sudden, and it was very tough. And then to make the story even worse, she ended up dying a year later. We thought she would outlive him and whatever. I think she died of, she was just kind of lost without him,
Yeah.
And it was very sad that two people I love dearly and were very good to me and my brother, and watched that situation. And yeah, I mean, this is kind of a little bit of a rambling episode to some degree, but I think it's very important that everyone take stock and understand, like, hey, what really matters. And I'm not saying work's not important. We get value from work that provides value to us as far as paying our bills and taking care of our families and our loved ones. And it's great to help people. Obviously, it's a very fulfilling occupation to be a city manager or assistant city manager or deputy city manager or whatever the case might be. But ultimately, isn't spending time with our loved ones the most important thing that we should probably be focused on?
Yeah, it is. And you did say something about helping others. And so, and we talked, I think we talked a little bit before we even turned the mics on about the fact that, you have to have something, to turn to. And obviously family, you want to be with family. But, if you'd have told me when I was a police officer that I would be a regular volunteer at a food pantry, or that I was going to I sit on the board of directors for the Union Rescue Mission, which is a Christian-based life change organization. I don't want to call them a homeless shelter because we don't believe in overnight shelter. If you come into our shelter, we are going to give you the skills to succeed in life, and you're going to go through the 12-month program. And hopefully, during that time, you proclaim Christ as your Savior. But I've joined the board, and now I'm next year I'll fall in line. I'm the vice chair. Next year I'll be the chair for 2 years. And I serve at a food pantry every month. And, it's a different relationship now that I have with the people that need those services than I had when I was in uniform as a police officer. And I get fulfillment out of that. I appreciate, I'm not making any money at it, but there's fulfillment from serving the greater good. There's, I want to spend more time with my children. My daughter and her husband live in Kansas City. Wouldn't it be great when they say, "Hey, Dad, would you come up and help us build the deck?" Instead of me racing up there on Friday night, doing all I can Saturday and Sunday, going, "Sure, I'll just come up and work on it for the next 2 weeks."
Right.
And just
hang
take
out.
my time doing it, and hang out and go enjoy. Right now, when I go up there, I work my butt off, and I don't have time to go out and enjoy dinner with them and things like that because I'm trying to get the project done. To be able to work 6 hours, relax, go and spend time with my daughter and her husband, and get up the next day and do it again, and not have a time commitment that I've got to be back at my W-2 job.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I'm looking forward to. I really am.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate it. We got an emotional, intense conversation, and I really thank you for sharing and opening up. I think a very important episode to have, and I'm hoping other folks. I think it obviously has some useful nuggets for people of all ages, but I'm hopefully some of those folks that are our age and older can really kind of listen to it and take it to heart, because time is short. I had a situation. We just obviously had the murder assassination of Charlie Kirk. My son at the Naval Academy, they just had an active shooter situation that turned out to be a false alarm, but a midshipman ended up getting shot, and thankfully he's going to survive. It was a wild experience, but I received a very intense text message from my son telling me that they were locking down and he loved us, and I didn't know if I was ever going to see him again, obviously, and thankfully everything turned out okay with my son and my family. But very sobering episodes and sobering situation right now, and for us to be mindful. And I'm guilty of this. I really I get frustrated with myself when I think about it over the years. And it's like, I want to kick myself and slap myself upside the head, because how many times have I been more present with my occupation or my job than I have been with the ones I love and whatnot when I get home. And I've been very guilty of shortchanging my family in that regard. So, hey, we only get one crack at this. We don't come with manuals. We're all learning it as we go. But this is your friendly reminder from Joe Dessenberger and Joe Turner, that, hey, be mindful of your time on this earth and how much you got left, and who you want to spend it with, and what do you want to spend it doing.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Thank you. I'm Joe Turner. This is the City Manager Unfiltered podcast. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the content, please hit that follow, subscribe button on your platform of choice. Please leave a rating and review on your platform of choice, and catch you next week.